Hi, this is Jonathan Rosenhead, the Jerusalem psychotherapist. This week's Torah and Psychology post, the Parshas Teruma, is going to discuss emotions. And this comes out in an interesting way from the beginning of this week's Parsha, where we read about the mitzvah to donate towards the Mishkan. That the Bnei Yisrael are told to donate towards the Mishkan, and the words of the pasuk are Ish Asher Yidvenu Libo. That it's presenting this to the Bnei Yisrael as being something which is motivated by a desire and a want to volunteer and contribute towards the Mishkan. And we can zoom in on this and focus on what is this aspect of Yidvenu Libo, that there's an emotional aspect to it, that it's playing on a person's heart to want to donate towards the Mishkan, as opposed what we could say as being based on an obligation or an intellectual understanding that if you're commanded to do something, therefore you carry out the mitzvah. And Rashi actually picks up on this idea, because he says that there are three cases where the word Teruma is mentioned, where there are three cases where the Bnei Yisrael donate towards the Mishkan, and two of these cases are actually an intellectual experience of an obligation. They're told to donate towards the Mishkan, and therefore that's what they do. Whereas in this week's Parsha, we have an interesting conceptualization of this mitzvah as being voluntary, something that you want to do because it's an emotional desire to actually contribute towards the Mishkan. What is the significance of this? Why is this important? To actually understand this emotional experience in contrast to an intellectual experience or obligation. So emotions are obviously a fundamental aspect of our life, but they are complex. It's difficult to define an emotion, or to actually explain or understand the process and expression of an emotion. And actually certainly contributes towards the complexity and the difficulty when a person experiences a traumatic experience or anxiety or depression. In these, we could say, negative emotions, or maladaptive emotions, because a person struggles to understand it, struggles to process it. And because of that, we can say inherently, it creates a detachment, a disconnect from the emotions due to the struggle to understand it and to, in a way, contain the emotions and to process them. And this can lead to many defense mechanisms of detachment, disassociation, denial, or even intellectualization, as we said, intellectualizing the situation rather than actually allowing for an emotional understanding and connection. And through the therapeutic process, certainly a person will be encouraged to explore the whole range of experiences and components within a traumatic experience or a negative experience. And a vital component, obviously, within that is to also allow for this connection with emotions, difficult emotions. But what's important, an important message to a person, is that all emotions are valid, all emotions are accepted, and all emotions deserve our attention. That doesn't mean, obviously, that every emotion needs to be expressed. If there are situations where a person has extreme anger, maybe the anger is justified. The emotion is there. It doesn't necessarily mean that a person has to act upon that. And maybe hopefully through the therapeutic process, you can learn ways to understand the anger, ways to help yourself to regulate the emotions. But the anger is still there. It's still an emotion that deserves, in a way, an acceptance. And we don't need to justify or explain why the emotion is there. It just is. And that's because emotions, we can, in a way, try to explain it as being, it's an indication of something, as an indication of what we are trying to achieve, that within the situation. There's an idea of emotions being an action tendency, that the emotion is what actually brings about and stimulates a person into action. That there's this urge, there's desire, there's this understanding that something is happening because it's important, because it's affecting you, and therefore the emotion is what stimulates and pushes the person into action. This action tendency, it's a stage of preparedness, preparing a person to follow through and complete a certain, whether it's a goal, action, of what, in terms of what they're involved or they're engaged in. If it's a situation, we can take it from a positive point of view. Something is happy, something is gives a pleasure and a sense of achievement. Then the emotion that a person experiences pushes a person on and makes a person want to complete and carry on and achieve whatever task they're involved in. If it's a negative aspect, if we can say that, if we can understand anger as being something negative, we don't want to push away or reject the anger. As we said, an emotional experience is there because it's happening and it's giving a message, because something is, if we take the example of anger, something is bothering us, something is upsetting us, something is not going the way we want it, someone is hurting us. The anger is an important message to understand and to be able to channel our action into how to deal with the situation. That doesn't, as we said, that doesn't always mean that we need to act upon this emotion in a behavioral way, but we need to understand and give credibility to that emotion as a message, as something which is a process that is built in within us to lead us towards an action tendency, to lead us towards fulfilling and understanding the internal urges and messages that we are receiving. So if we look at what's presented in this week's parsha, of the mitzvah of donating towards the Mishkan because we want to, ish asher yidvenu libo, it's drawing on this emotional experience. It's drawing on this action tendency. It's not just because of a conceptualization based on an intellect, based on an understanding that we are obligated, but rather there's an internal message that we are receiving, that this is what we want to do. This is something that's important to us. This is something that has significance and meaning. And the action tendency of a desire, of an urge to want to contribute towards the Mishkan, to which leads this action tendency of donating and giving towards the Mishkan, is giving us an extra additional aspect of this experience of Teruma, of giving to the Mishkan, because it's built on an internal urge and desire which is then put into action by giving to the Mishkan. And this is the complexity, but also perhaps the extra layer that we can take out from an emotional experience of ish asher yidvenu libo. Have a great Shabbos and keep well.